Well, welcome to the Public Sector Summit panel discussion. We have an amazing panel of thought leaders from across the industry to share experiences and insights. My name is Jason Pope, and I'll be moderating this discussion. My role is I lead the pre-sales engineering team at Rubrik in the Americas, and I've been a part of Rubrik for the last 7.5 years. Our discussion today is going to be very focused on defending critical infrastructure from advanced cyber threats. We've seen a huge increase in state-sponsored cyber actors probing and trying to infiltrate critical infrastructure for destructive attacks. In the last year alone, we've seen a 70% increase in those types of attacks. Cyber resilience and ability to recover when, not if, attacked is extremely crucial. Why don't we start off with some quick intros and dive into the discussion? Rishma, would you start off?
Sure. Welcome to everybody joining this Public Sector Summit. My name is Rishma Kimji. I'm the Chief Information Technology Officer at the Harry Reid International Airport, which is the airport in Las Vegas. And so it's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Josh, how about you next?
Thank you for having me today. Josh Clem, Chief Information Officer at the New York State Thruway Authority, where we oversee the operations of 550 miles of fiber optic backbone, as well as 570 miles of roadway and all corresponding technology infrastructure. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Very, very cool. Last but not least, Jason.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Jason Frame. I'm the Chief Information Officer at Southern Nevada Health District, and we're the local public health agency, and we're also a federally qualified healthcare center in the Las Vegas area.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining me for this discussion. Let's have some fun. First question is going to be for everyone. So why don't we start with Rishma to kick it off, and we'll have everyone answer this question. But what types of attacks keep you up at night? And what are the steps that you've taken to enhance your cyber resilience posture in light of the possibility that your organization would experience one of these attacks? So Rishma, why don't you start off?
Yeah, really great question. So I always joke that I sleep really well at night because I have a great cybersecurity team. But I will tell you that as we're seeing more and more vector attacks towards our partners, such as Seattle, that just had a ransomware not too long ago, one of the things that we are really paying attention to is the user, right? They're sometimes our weakest link, and we need to make sure that we are providing them with resources and education to make them much smarter advocates within the email system and within the network itself. But the kinds of things that keep us awake at night is really are those types of events that would prevent our passengers and our guests from coming to Vegas and leaving Vegas. Our whole business at the airport is to ensure that we're the first look and the last look of someone's adventure in Las Vegas. And so if we can't get people through the city, then we're really not doing the job that we're supposed to do. And so what we really need to make sure that we're doing well is ensuring that, one, we have a good resiliency plan in place, that we have a recovery plan in place, and that we are practicing those plans as often as we can so that we can build that muscle memory. And without having those systems in place, then we're not going to be able to really recover if something was to happen, because if we really think about it, cybersecurity attacks are no longer an if, it's a when. And we really need to protect ourselves and be that much more aware of what's happening, not just to our neighbors and in our industry, but also to our communities, and making sure that we are building those types of plans that allows us to be more resilient and quicker to recover.
Makes sense. Josh, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, I think Rishna really nailed it there. One of my two primary things, I don't sleep as well as she does, so I'll have to ask her some tips there. I still have a great team, but a little less sleep. The user, the identity and access management component is something that we focus on quite a bit. You can architecture network, you can put the right east-west controls in place, you can put everything else that you're supposed to have there. But ultimately, a compromised set of credentials and maybe a compromised appliance for utilizing someone's MFA really can put you in a bad position. So, we put into place the proper MFAs, zero trust frameworks, enhanced password authentication protocols, but that's still an area where, ultimately as IT, you have less domain of control than you do over your hardware and systems. The other side for us, and I think might resonate for the others in the call as well, is the OT space. Generally speaking, in the IT side, it's very straightforward for us to patch, manage, and control systems from a streamlined and centralized platform. In the OT side of the world, each appliance is a little bit different. Some can get an update pushed, some can't. Some will be taken offline if you push an update to them. You might have to go touch them physically out in the field. And for us, covering 570 miles of road, that's a lot of work. So we do significant monitoring in that space. We've really improved our posture in that space, and it's still one of those pieces where you say, what can we do better, right? Because it's a less mature arena, and all of that, ultimately is because we know, as you alluded to, the attacks happen, right? It's not if, it's when. We've seen multiple wins in my time here. And thankfully, we have the right solutions in place so that if we are brought offline or if someone does succeed in attack, we know that our last line of defense, that DR and restoration process will have us covered.
Awesome, Mike. So I obviously work at Rubrik, and I can tell you that we have over 6,000 customers, and we see one or two of these attacks almost weekly. So it has become an a when, not an if type of question.
Yeah.
Jason, any feedback from you?
Yeah, definitely. Being in healthcare for us, it's about the data and it's about the ransomware. You look back over the last couple of years, both healthcare and government have been the two most attacked vectors out there, and we're both of those. So that's what keeps me up at night, is the fact that if something were to happen, not only is our data gone, but the privacy of thousands of customers, or more than that, in our valley would be breached. And to me, that's a really thing that I want to avoid. We do a lot of stuff. We focused on all the technology that we can. We're trying to become more resilient. We're putting in the multi-factor and the ID control and everything else. But really, we're focused now on the users, because the better we can train our users, the less likely this is to happen. I'm not one of the things that our users are the first line of defense, because that's too much of a burden to put on them. But we're trying to show them how to recognize when something doesn't look right in the email, how to see if that URL is correct, and just try to train them up. We have great people there, with the nurses and the providers on it. They're great at what they do, and technology is not it. So we're not going to put that burden of being that first line of defense on them. We're just going to help them out to how to identify stuff. And that's really shown an improvement to us. Other things we've done to become more resilient, we've done tabletop exercises. We've, worked through our plans, kind of a little push for Rubrik here. You have your save the data activity, which we've done. And that's a great activity. If you haven't done that, definitely look into it. That's a great one if you've never thought about what would happen in a ransomware attack. I know the first time I went through that, I learned so much that we're starting to do multiple tabletops over and over, because the best way to work your plan is to make sure that you've done it before. Like as Rishma said, get that muscle memory in there. And that just takes time, it takes execution, and it takes planning.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. It is one of the things that we talk to a lot of customers about, which is just making sure that you've practiced, like you actually have taken the time to go through and understand what you would do in that type of scenario. Let's dive a little bit deeper into each of your specific verticals. Rishma, why don't we start off with you, huge in the aviation industry. So what are some distinct cyber resiliency concerns that for the aviation industry specifically? And how does your cyber resiliency strategy address those concerns and help restore operations quickly if needed?
Yeah, an airport is very unique in its business model. We really have to work cooperatively and collaboratively with our airline partners and our concessionaires and other vendors that are at the airport. So we're kind of like the landlord, but we have other people that do business here at the airport. And so in order to be resilient, we have to ensure that everyone is able to do the business, right? And be able to conduct business. But, more importantly, we've got to get the passengers in and out of the airport. And so resiliency for us is really ensuring that in those cooperative relationships with our airlines, with our concessionaires, with all of those different stakeholders that engage in our infrastructure and our network, that they're also apprised of what needs to be done if something were to happen at the airport. And so our tabletops include our stakeholders so that they also understand what is our pattern, what is our plan to get back to normal business. And so we really believe that in order to be the most resilient, we also have to be the most cooperative and coordinated with our partners. And so we really try and focus on that a lot. We also try and focus on, what is our data? What is the priority of our different data? What is the categories of our data? Because the more we understand the type of data that's exchanged at the airport, the better stewards we can be of ensuring that that data is being passed and transferred and saved and part of our disaster recovery when and if necessary. So we really have to dive deep into what are we doing, how are we doing it, and why are we doing it. The why is really big. A lot of people are very vested in the type of work that they do. And so they'll do things and say, this is how we've always done it. And so we really have to start digging into, but why are we doing it that way? Data retention is huge as well, especially in the government space. And we need to make sure that, one, we're retaining data appropriately and correctly, and really dispelling the myths of this is how we've always done it. And so it's the right way to really say, hey, how can we do this better and safeguard the data of all of our stakeholders? Because our communities are so important to us and we need to make sure that we're safeguarding their data. So resiliency for us is very cooperative. It's having that partnership with our stakeholders, but also internally understanding what our data is and why we're collecting it.
Makes a ton of sense, and definitely an interesting challenge with all the different stakeholders that you have to work with. Definitely.
Yeah, and it's not just the airlines and those folks that are here, but it's also our three-letter partners at the federal level, right? The TSA and the FAA and Homeland Security. So we have a lot of partners that help the business of the airports actually get planes up and planes down. So so it's very important to us to be cooperative.
Awesome. Let's move on to healthcare a little bit. So I'll turn to you, Jason. Data is exploding everywhere, and it's no different in the healthcare space. I know the data that you're seeing is growing exponentially, fueled by things like automation, digital transformation. It's increased the healthcare sector's vulnerability to ransomware, like you talked a little bit about before. I know a lot of your team is probably spending a lot of time focused on just backup and recovery. How can healthcare organizations optimize their backup and recovery strategies to mitigate risk and enable your IT teams to focus on innovative patient care solutions versus, backup and recovery?
Yeah, definitely. For us, it kind of goes back to the basics. I mean, Rishma touched on it a little bit. It's knowing your data. Knowing what's the data that we need, what the life cycle and the lifespan of that data is, how long we need to keep these records, what our retention spans are. For us, those are the big things. If we give an immunization to a newborn child, we have to keep that record for 21 years and then understand how to manage that, and then where that needs to be located, how we need to back up and be able to recover that is a big deal for us. And being in IT, generally, we don't know those things right away. So we have to work with our partners, work with the different programs here, and become, rather than IT, we're just another business partner to this group. And they are now part of our backup and recovery process because they're telling us what they need. They're helping us with our continuity of operations. So now we know what are the most important factors that we need to get up first. If we were to be hit, how to improving our resiliency, what's the top priority? What's the secondary priority? What things can wait a week? What things can wait a month? Those type of activities that we've been doing. So the last year, we've been doing a lot of continuity of operations planning, both internally in IT, but also with our whole district, all 800 people. Ransomware is a big deal for us, the privacy of it. We saw during COVID, we were the main agency in the Vegas area on COVID, just like most public health agencies around the country were. And one big public health agency got hit, and they were down for about 4 months. They were using paper. And we were doing, 5 to 10,000 records a day. I couldn't imagine that on paper. So for us, it's about becoming resilient, not focus on just the backup and recovery, but, everything else that goes along with that. Fortunately, we have some good partners that we're able to work with that have helped us on this. Our backup process now is a lot easier than it used to be. We're able to get back up and recover really quickly. We've re-architected our whole strategy on that, and we've moved to a colo center, and we're also backing up some to the cloud. So we're starting on that cloud journey with the backups on, just to be able to provide more because the amount of data is growing. We couldn't keep up with the hardware.
Yeah.
And now moving into the age of AI, AI in healthcare has become a big topic. You go to any healthcare conference and it's mostly focused on AI. But before you can get into the AI, you have to have that data security and the understanding of your data secured there. So we focused on that as we're moving into AI and understanding where that data is, what data we can use and what data we can't use to protect ourselves, both from a ransomware and a security side, but also from a privacy side.
It makes sense. AI definitely adds a new wrinkle, new layer in data security and managing your data. No
It does,
question.
and I think a lot of companies are jumping into it without thinking about that, and then you're starting to see, unintended consequences of their data showing up in public models where they didn't want.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Let's Josh, let's take a move back to the throughway and all the roadways that you have to manage. From talking to your team, I know that you take pride in the way your team efficiently supports all the statewide IT infrastructure, and I know it's a lot of roadways to manage. Um, Cross-functional team collaboration and access to data is critical to the operation of the throughway. What are your biggest concerns related to data availability, access, and security across the enterprise? And how does your cyber resiliency strategy address these concerns?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you talk availability. I think a lot of our brains kind of go to the CIA triad, right? Your confidentiality, your integrity, and your availability. And that availability space is very important for us. We're 24/7, 365. The road doesn't close, right? Hundreds of millions of motorists travel our roadway every year. They go to our service areas, and conversely, we also have our internal staff. Almost 2,000 people that need to access systems 24/7, 365 to make sure the roadway is safe and operable. So for us, availability is critical. In my time, we re-architected stretch clusters across the roadway. So we have multiple failover zones that are hot in real time so that if any outage occurs, whether it's a physical issue or a network issue or other, we can keep running. We extend that even into the cloud so that if we have some sort of regional outage, we're still able to provide the support we need to give to the motoring public and to our internal staff. And ultimately that's great, except as everyone's mentioned, there's those days when somebody comes knocking and maybe they become successful and you find yourself in a ransomware situation or other. And that's where we looked at, the immutable backup solution as kind of our final fail safe to be able to ensure we keep the lights on. So if any of those environments do get compromised, we're able to restore and recover quickly. And I think both Jason and Rishma brought up great points. Really, a lot of that's about your data, right? And one of the functions that we saw recently introduced into the platform that I, as a former data officer and CISO, loved was the data classification tool that's just running as our backups are generated, right? So we started to learn and then do outreach on where data is sitting that our business users may have placed in an environment they shouldn't have, so that we could do refresher trainings on maybe PCI compliance and things of that nature, or whatever the topic may be. So not only are we better running and operating internally and making sure that we do our due diligence as we operate systems and keep the programs running, we know now better where things might be sensitive that we did not previously know if we find ourselves in ransomware, right? So if somebody has been unintentionally storing data they're not supposed to store on a certain file share or other, we now see that. And if it's ever compromised, we know exactly what somebody had access to. We can do risk mitigation and things of that nature. So, architect to 3 to 4 layers deep, that's generally one of my rules of thumb to make sure we can stay hot 24/7. But then also knowing exactly what you have, where you have it, and how you're going to recover it when that bad day happens to your organization is really critical to staying laser focused to recovery as opposed to doing discovery during the recovery phase.
That's makes a ton of sense. It's interesting you talked about just understanding what data you have out there, where that data is, if that data may be sensitive. We do proof of concepts all the time with our customer, and some of the things that we find shock them about the data that's out there just because they didn't know it was there. And it might be the most sensitive data that, should a cyber attacker get access to it, could be a massive impact to your business.
Mhm.
All right, let's jump back into the aviation industry, Rishma, if you don't mind. In light of the recent disruptive events in the aviation industry that were compounded by legacy technology, how has your team at Harry Reid International Airport managed the challenges of legacy backup and cybersecurity practices?
Oh, that's a really good question. So I will say that it is a new adventure every day. We do have some legacy systems. We do rely on those legacy systems, but it's our plan is twofold. One, it's to segregate that system and do better catalog of the data and the workflow so that we can replicate it in some fashion and then save that. So we're trying to figure out what's the best way to do backups of a legacy system, because that's decades worth of data that we might still have. So again, it goes back to knowing your data and why we're keeping that data and what the retention is on that. So there's a lot of discovery going on with those legacy systems now. Second is we're also trying to be smarter as to how we segment those systems on our network. So ensuring that they are segmented, they are not, part of a main network infrastructure, but really ensuring that they have their own space so that we can manage that space better and have better cybersecurity controls over it. We're also partnering with some other cloud vendors, cloud hosting vendors that have different tool sets that allow us to replicate that legacy system in the cloud, and therefore we can move it off of our infrastructure into another system and have some better recovery and resiliency methods with that as well. So, we're really looking at the data. We're trying to figure out how much of the data do we need because it's legacy, and what is that data for? And then again, segregating and making sure that the system is able to be supported in a much different fashion than some of our more modern technologies are, but really paying attention to that the way it communicates with our users and things like that. I would also say that legacy systems in the government space, we sometimes have to stick with some legacy systems because those vendors have not or do not have the capacity to modernize the technology stack. And I'm trying to say that in a very nice way because I know that there are some limitations, especially in infrastructures like the airport, where the business has to rely on real-time sharing and information. And so having to overhaul something that is so broad and that is so connected and has so many different connections to it can be very expensive and cumbersome. And so it could not just be a vendor issue, it could also be a pricing issue for us as well in the end, and having to support and pay for those kinds of things. So we really have to have those engaged relationships with the vendors to say, if this is a legacy system, how are you also going to help us provide some resiliency within that system? And how can you help us build some of that cybersecurity protocols that we need to? Because we need to have those partnerships, and we need to be better at those partnerships when we're really trying to engage with them in modernizing our system. So it is a task. But I think so long as you have, again, a cooperative relationship and you can rely on your users to understand the workflow and the data, you're going to be that much better at ensuring that your legacy system has, one, the protections that it needs, and two, that it has a data catalog that you need as well to ensure that you're managing that data. So there's a lot to it, but we're very lucky that Rubrik has different interfaces and a lot of ways to look at our legacy systems and really help us embed that resiliency in those systems with our data. And so we're trying to use those technologies as often and as much as we can just to be better.
Awesome. Thank you. Josh, let's go back to the Thruway. I know you guys manage data that is extremely important for analyzing, understanding things like traffic flow, driver safety, security. There's also all sorts of developments around the connected vehicle and autonomous vehicles that have the potential to just blow up your data footprint. What tools do you use to identify and back up critical driver safety and throughway security data? And how do you scale your operations as that data expands?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And to your point, I just kind of underscore that we generate just on the roadway hundreds of billions of data points annually. As vehicles become more connected and we're moving our way into that space ourselves, that's going to exponentially grow. That will result in a lot of benefit to the motoring public and to our staff. But to your other point, that then makes one more area that I have to protect and ensure is available and able to be recovered if there's ever compromise. So, one of the approaches we took with Rubrik was have the on-premise backup, right? So if anything happens, there's a brick in our data centers, and we can go out there and restore successfully. But having the what if scenarios covered, I think, was a bit of a differentiator that we really appreciated. So, as we assess the landscape, I kept asking my folks to take that what if, right? What if we can't get to that? What if we can't touch that? What if the network's out and you can't get there? And there were multiple options, not only just to have additional copies kept in our hyperscaler partners' environments, but also copies that we would be able to work with you all on restoring in the event that we lost access to those. So the immutable backup solution to us, again, is that final line of defense. It's that thing that lets me get that tiny bit of sleep at night that I do get, knowing that, okay, if I wake up tomorrow and everything is gone terribly awry overnight, we can restore, we can recover, and get business back to normal. So that's where we see those solutions fitting in, is as we grow beyond the scale of what we can store on premise, having those hyperscaler options, those hyperscaler platforms available that you all offer to ensure that our data and our backups can scale accordingly. Because I don't want to pay to store data 4 times on premise. It becomes a poor value proposition for the organization.
Makes sense. All right, last question. I'll open it up to everyone. Have any of you taken advantage of the Department of Homeland Security state and local cybersecurity grant program that was funded through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Acts of 2021, or any other type of infrastructure funding to strengthen your cyber resilience posture? Maybe I'll start off with Jason and just kind of go across.
Yeah, Jason, we're working on some projects right now, working with the Homeland Security cybersecurity grant program. We're working through that process. In Nevada, everything that we want to do locally has to go through the state, and then it gets ranked, and then it falls into line. So we're working on that right now. But we also have the public health infrastructure grant that came out last year, and we've used that to help strengthen our resilience. We were able to hire one more person to help us out on security, as well as get some more security software and security applications that are helping us out. So we're taking advantage of those wherever we can. Being government, sometimes we have to wait for grants to come out to be able to do some of this stuff. And so we're always looking at those opportunities.
Awesome. Rishma, how about you?
Yeah, so we're looking at opportunities as they're presented to us as well. Again, we have to go through the state and get ranked that way. And so what we're trying to also do is take advantage of the services that can be provided to us. CISA is a great resource to us, so we use them a lot, and really trying to partner more with them so that we can get some additional knowledge and some training from them so that our teams can be that much more resilient and experienced when it comes to cybersecurity initiatives. And so where we're not able to get grants, we are still trying to get those other services that are offered to us. So we are very lucky to have some of those agencies available to us.
Awesome. Josh, how about you?
Yeah, we're in a similar boat to Rishma. So we're not generally direct recipients of those grants, but we are, I'll say, indirect beneficiaries. So when the state received funding to improve its cybersecurity posture, we were able to work with them and leverage the economy of scale we have to ensure that we were able to take advantage of some of the grant funding they got. And I'll say similarly, we've worked very closely with CISA to improve our posture. We've had them come and do pen testing, which is incredibly thorough and informative experience, and really nothing but the utmost professionals there. So it's not just the things that they offer monetarily, it's the things that Homeland Security and the other federal partners will provide to you through different channels to ensure that you do have the best cybersecurity posture you possibly can have. and any unknown unknowns get brought to your attention quickly.
Awesome. Huge thank you. Thank you to all of you for being a part of this. What a cool group of panelists. Like, you guys are all focused on keeping some of the most important services in the world up and running, at least services that I deal with personally as well. So huge thank you to you all. I hope everyone found this discussion valuable. And as you're planning on defending your infrastructure, I think you heard a lot about how important the data was and identifying what is the most mission critical portions of your data, how important that your data security was, and ensuring that in the event that win scenario, you're able to recover your data, and also how important understanding your cyber risk and cyber resilience can be. So with that said, thank you. Hope everybody had a great day.